Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele. I am the host for Are We Transforming? Today we are having Douglas de Bruyn all the way from the Western Cape. He's going to talk to us about ethnic and racial identity. That is one thing that actually drew my attention. But before I even go into what is it that he's going to talk about, we are a platform that actually allow people to come and share their views, and then out of that identify areas of improvement and share with relevant stakeholders, which will actually allow us to be able to probably do research or even identify solutions. So this is one of those that we're going to be sharing. So as Douglas is busy preparing himself, we welcome you, and we believe that as you watch this, you're gonna be enjoying. And yeah, this is one of those, I think, very sensitive conversations which we usually avoid to have. And it's good that today we took it upon ourselves to discuss these issues and to find a way in which we understand where or how others view this kind of topics. So I'll hand over to Douglas to introduce himself and also indicate what is it that he do, and then we can go straight to the topic. Then we'll discuss as we go. Over to you, Douglas. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. It's such an honor to be part of what you are busy with and part of your journey.
Thank you.
Like Tammy say, I am Douglas de Bruyn. I was born in Worcester. I grew up on an apple farm in the Western Cape, Verliesdorp, Heinun specifically. I think I had so many things that really changed my life, or caused changes happening in my life. One of the things that changed me, I grew up in Worcester, like I said. And then in 1998, I traveled to a very small place in the Eastern Cape, in the northern parts of the Eastern Cape, called Berkeley East. Now, just to a little bit of my background, I am a freelance facilitator. Now, back to the story again, in Berkeley East in 1998, it was actually my first experience with predominantly Xhosa people. I grew up based on my classification within South African context as a colored young man. And then with my journey to the Eastern Cape in Berkeley East specifically, none of the people or the community that I was exposed to could speak either Afrikaans or English, so I was forced to learn Xhosa. Few months down the line, after I've learned Xhosa, like I was forced to do that, I met a lady in Durban. That was in 2005. And this lady is actually, we met in Durban, but she's from my hometown, Worcester. And then she said, "Man, who's your father?" I then told her who my father is, Philip Wilson. "Man, I know Philip. I actually know his father." But as a colored man from Worcester, I thought my classification based on my identity book was, well, my classification was colored. Then this lady said, "Man, your grandfather is Xhosa." And that actually caused a huge change in my life, because then I turned back to Worcester. I returned in 2007. I met up with this lady. She introduced to my grandfather, who was Xhosa. Unfortunately, then he was no longer. And then I was exposed to my roots, actually, which is Xhosa. Still with my identity book that classify me as a colored young man, this caused a lot of confusion. Because luckily for me, my journey went to the Eastern Cape in 1998, where I learned Xhosa and I've learned about the culture. And a lot of people, they were asking me, "Man, if you are Xhosa, from which tribe am I?" And I've had so many tribes that I adopted because I wanted to feel part and belong to a certain tribe of people. I'm really grateful for that woman, Mom Peter, that I met in Durban, that was from my hometown. In 2008, 2007, I met with my lovely wife, Lungiswa, and now we are married and we have 3 lovely kids. And because of me now able to speak Xhosa, it opened many doors for me. And because of our divided past in South Africa, I now know that whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you're black, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, whether you're poor or rich, all of us as human beings, at the core of our lives, there's one thing that we want. We all desire to be accepted and to belong. For me, really, that is really something that changed my life, and especially back to the topic of race and ethnicity, is that one thing that we need to understand is that when it comes to race and ethnicity, this line between the two, it is very, very small, because our race on dictionary, it is defined as a category of the humankind that says a certain distinctive physical traits. In fact, in South Africa, in our past, in apartheid past, we were classified based on the size of your nose, the size of your lips, the size of your eyes, the size of your bum, and those could have classified us as that you belong to either black race or a white race or a colored race.
Wow.
So, in fact, all of these systems, you'll find that all of it is flawed. If we want to be defined us as human beings based on our race, and me as a believer, I really come to understand that whether you're from whatever race, we all come from one race, and that's the human race. Our ethnicity, you know, it's almost the same, because it refers to the national background of which we as human beings can identify ourselves with, our culture, and these things that can influence the way people behave, the way we make decisions. And it is based also in terms of what we believe in, because our ethnicity, it can really define us from what kind of people we are. But both of these two, Thembi, what I think is really common is that both of these, it is actually dividing us as South African.
Yeah.
Because all of us want to belong, and yet the Xhosas thinks they are better than the Zulus thinks that they are better than the Pedis thinks that they are better than the colors thinks they are better than the white, and all of us are really compared to us with one another. And all of us come from this one human race. We all come from one blood. And for me, really, what is common about these two subjects is it is dividing ourselves. I'm exposed now to so many Brazilians. I get almost 3 groups of volunteers that comes to our place. They stay at my home. Currently, we are hosting about 13 Brazilian team, and all of them are staying in my house. And if you look at these people, and you will see with the pictures that I've shared with you on my mail, is that if you look at these Brazilians, you will never be able to identify them. Are they colored? Are they black? Are they white? Because if you look at their face, you will see you get a Brazilian with green eyes. But you know, this system of being identified as a race is so flawed. That's why you will find out in the summer, in the beach, the white people want to tan themselves because they want to be black. Us black people, we are using so many chemicals because we all want to be white. So it is so confusing, and it's making us really to compare ourselves with one another, and it making us actually to damp the ability upon ourselves as human beings. Because I believe that God have created us all for a certain purpose, not to compare one another to one another. And for me, that is so painful for us to see within South African context that we can still continue to be identified as a certain race, and it's really sad. So for me, I just thought of few questions that I always pose to my son, who is Graham. He's named after my brother, my older brother Graham. I call him Graham the Great. And my son continues still now in this day and age in South Africa, ask myself, Daddy, am I colored? Daddy, am I black? Why is my hair like this? Why is my bum so big? Why is my lip so big? So I really believe that all of us as South Africans, we really need to get inner healing from trying to identify and trying to be someone that we've never been created by. So I always tell Graham these questions that I really wanted to pose also our listeners. When it comes to our race and our ethnicity, does it matter? And unfortunately, I cannot answer those questions because each one of us are created unique, and we have to pose ourselves those questions and answer it for ourselves. Does race and ethnicity matter? What do you want to achieve if you know your race and your ethnicity? Is it important? Where do we come from? What does our maker thinks of us?
I must ask you of that.
So many of us, we spend so much time with things that really doesn't matter. I think we owe it to one another to really understand from where are we? Why do we need to compare ourselves to one another? What defines us as human beings? Is it the color of our skin? Or is it our ability? That is far more, like the old people used to say, don't judge a book by its color. And that is really what we do. I mean, you have stayed in the Western Cape, and there are certain things that you could achieve or not achieve just because the color of your skin, and that limits us from the gift that we have in one another. And if I really, we're missing the gift that God has placed in one another, because we still continue to judge one another based on our race and based on the color of our skin. I'm really grateful for the experience that I had to be exposed to learn Xhosa, and only to find out that I am ex-Xhosa. Dingumia utwanin. So I'm loved by the moment that I really found that there's such a lot of beauty in one another, where we can really embrace one another, not based on the color of our skin, not based on the color of our hair, not based on the type of skin color or the color of or the type of color hair that we had. But now I can really appreciate Tembi, not because of what I see, but because of the ability that you have as a human being that comes from one father and one blood.
How was your journey after discovering that your lineage is actually Xhosa, and your grandfather, I mean, that makes you Xhosa indeed? And the confusion that you went through, how did you deal with that? Because I think many people might have found out who they are and where they come from, which actually makes them to now start saying to themselves, like your son is saying, am I colored or am I black? And whether it matters or not is one of those things. But how did you travel your journey in this confusion?
You know, Thembi, I am the only son from 7 other brothers and 1 sister that are able to speak Xhosa. And now I understand what a lovely thing is to embrace everyone, not because of their skin color. And it's such a beautiful thing because it opened so many doors, because I have come to embrace the human race, because now I'm not just part of the colored nation that many times in many ways can limit ourselves to our God-given ability, but I'm part of a whole new world that says that all of us are the same. And literally most of my work now is to build bridges between the different races, between different cultures, and to say is that, guys, let's open up to one another. And I mean, for me, it's a great benefit because based on the BE scorecard, if it fits me, I'm colored. If it fits me, I'm Xhosa. Yeah.
I think I'm just imagining this the rejection. Did you ever experience any rejection? Let me welcome people that are coming in. Some are saying that they are having issues with the network, but I believe that they will catch up as we go. How did you deal with possible rejection, if ever there was? Because I think your embracing led to you now deciding I can actually even marry outside of my, okay, we'll say ethnic group. This will be colored in this case, and marry a black person, a Xhosa speaking person. How did you deal with the rejection, if ever there was? Was there acceptance from the family?
Actually, my younger brother still doesn't want to accept that he's Xhosa, but that is his journey that he has to travel whenever he's ready. And I've really opened up to them also. And my older brother always say that, you know, you always felt like a Xhosa. So yeah, and like I say, I think all of us, if we can travel deep, not to into our lineage, but to into who we really are and what we desire as human beings, we can embrace ourselves irrespective of what other people think of us. Rejection, yes, I continue to receive many rejection. I feel many times sorry for my wife if I have to take her to my colored brothers and sisters, because it is just not nice. The way I still see in this day and age how they treat my lovely wife, that have so much potential. The way they look at her, the way racism is so cruel to me that many times people think that racism is defined by the color of our skin, but it's actually the way we feel, because the moment you step into somebody's presence of another color, you can see not from what race he is, but actually if he's racist or not. It doesn't need to tell me if he's racist or not, but we can feel the presence, the coldness towards another race. And that is so cruel, I think, to us as Africans, that in such a beautiful country, that racism exists because we embrace and continue to embrace this classification that I think it's a system that really needs to be relooked at. Whether it's based on equity or based on whatever reason. But I think for the policymakers, there's so much work for us to do in terms of how do we enhance, or how we allow us to put a roof on top on our ability as the human people, as one nation, so much diverse, with so much potential, because even us as amongst one another, even as Black people, there's so much racism that we can experience from our Black brothers, and the way we treat one another. And I mean, many times, I don't know, we are racist when we like, and we are racist when we don't like. So racism is not just the system, but it's the way we do the things that we do.
Wow, I'm actually touched by the aspect of you still experiencing racism, and unfortunately, even within your family or your racial group, something that I think most of us will also experience. I remember when I was still in the Western Cape, I would be sitting with the Xhosa speaking people, and because of my name, they couldn't tell whether I'm Xhosa or not. So I would kind of fit in without them realizing, until probably they realize or they ask, "Where are you from?" And then I explain, "Oh, is it in South Africa?" You know, those, and I start now feeling out. Then they will start talking to each other. Luckily, I knew the language, so I would participate. But they would make you feel like you're an outsider. You do not belong within the group. And for me, it actually speaks to what you were saying when you said, does it matter what ethnic group do I come from? But it looks like we hold it so high to an extent that we start belittling each other, like you are saying. We start looking down on each other. And one see it also at work, hey, Douglas? You see it at work and you ask yourself, will we ever change? So how do you go about trying to break that barrier, or the continuous racial actions that come from even people you love, that you live with on a daily basis? I know I would usually say, you guys don't want to have people around you, so let me just leave you in peace so that you can engage. No, that's not what we said. But you could tell that with their actions, they're actually saying to you, we are fine as we are. When you came and became an intruder of some sort, and I'm Black, as the only issue is I don't speak the same language, which is still continuing. You know, the nepotism that you experience, the way in which people will get jobs, how people will be considered for specific projects based on where you come from and the language you speak. So how do you still, because it's something that you experience on a continuous basis. It may not be daily, but every time you visit your family, it's something you experience.
You know, Tembi, there is so much prejudice, so much discrimination still happening. And I know, especially in the Western Cape, it's worse. A friend of us that we used to go to the same church is sold white. He's coming from Pretoria, and his uncle have a farm close here in the Western Cape. He was in the construction business and doesn't know anything of the grape industry. But just because of the color of his skin, he's now the manager and managing people that have more than 20 years experience in the industry. The same in when I can call so many incidents like this. But like I say, it's still so sad that even within the church circles, that we are so afraid to even talk about it, let alone doing something about it. That's why you still get the Black Baptist Church, you get the White Baptist Church, you get the Colored Baptist Church, and all of us, we sing the song that all nations, all tongue and all races will serve the one God together. So I really don't know that if it goes like this in the church.
Yes. Yeah. That is
what about the outside circles of the church? So my pastor that we were released in our church few weeks ago, but my pastor from my previous church, is white, and we always had coffee together. And one thing that always comes to our conversation is that unless we do something deliberate about this, it will not change. I mean, many of us, we say, let's allow God and the process to unfold. But I mean, why did God planted us here on earth? And that's why I always say, because he's white, the system has been created in South Africa that the white will remain in a certain stage, in a certain level of life. So he need to expose my son. Whenever he goes to the farm to his cousin or to his brother-in-law, he need to take my son with. Whenever it's my son's birthday, he must come to Zwelathemba where we stay, so that people can see us, that this thing is not something that time will change, or people need to change it. We need to change it. We need to live together. I mean, at our workplaces, we have people that we call friends that is from a different race. But how many people from our white brothers you will see in the black communities? Are we really serious about transformation?
Yeah.
Or is it just a story of the book? Are we really serious about making the low valleys to bring those up and to bring the mountains down? Are we really serious about demolishing systems that has been established to segregate people? Because it has nothing to do with the color of the skin. It is the system that we need to really address. The system has been established to separate people. And that's why we need to demolish those systems. And it's not those things that will change, but we need to change as human beings.
That is so true. Welcome to those who have joined us. Unfortunately, some are leaving because probably of the network. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about ethnicity and racial identity. And we have got Douglas Bruyn as our guest, who has taken us through a story of him finding out that actually, despite him being colored or classified as colored, he found out that his grandfather is actually Xhosa. And that took him through a journey of realizing the fact that you don't necessarily have to identify yourself based on ethnicity or ethnic groups or racial divide, but because or through being a human being. So the human race should be one of those things that we identified ourselves with. Few questions he asked: does it matter that you come from an ethnic or specific ethnic group? Does it matter that you are of a specific race? As much as we always preach, hey Douglas, about we want to address the imbalances of the past. But in my workspace, I always say to my colleagues, the fact that in this room, for instance, the time before the COVID-19, you will see blacks only. Is it not the reverse of what we used to see? Why aren't we mixing if we are the rainbow nation that we are talking about? And in one meeting, this guy attacked me and he said, no, we worked for this country, we fought for this country, and I'm like, oh God, are we really transforming? Actually, this concept came from all sorts of experiences that I've come across and also seen. And I think you're asking questions that are making me realize the fact that doesn't it now make the white people and probably colored and Indians angry now or feeling discriminated because they don't or benefit from what the black people are currently benefiting? I mean, policies are about how black people can benefit. how they can get appointed, how they can get land. Not much is said about how also the white people can still continue to benefit, though at a minimal rate. So how do we, in your view, how do we go about making sure that that aspect is addressed and there's a change of mindset from what the politicians preach to us, as much as it may be true to a certain extent, but does it have to be 100% everybody has to benefit because they are Black, you know?
Well, then for me, obviously, when it comes to race and when it comes to your ethnic group that you're coming from, the foundation of both of these principles is to keep us apart.
Mm.
The foundation of this principle is to say that we are different.
Mm.
And as long as we are going to look in terms of how different we are, then for us to look at how much we have in common, things will never come. But that doesn't cancel the fact that change is necessary. That doesn't say that change will be easy. And like I said earlier, that although change is not easier, we all need to change. Both white need to change, both Black need to change. All of us, we need to undergo a process. You know, there's a lovely story in the Bible of Jesus when he went to be baptized by John. John didn't wanted to baptize Jesus. In fact, he refused, but Jesus said, man, I have to go through this process. And you know, eventually he baptized Jesus. But what was so lovely about this process is that when he came out of the water, you know what happened? Heaven opened. Things started to happen.
Yes.
And if John didn't agree on baptizing Jesus, heavens would not have opened. So for us, whether you're from a white race or from a Black race, all of us, we need to understand that since it's not easy, but all of us, we need to be baptized. So that things will happen in our life. You know, for me, what is so lovely of all the love that I experienced from my Black brothers, and not only from my Black brothers, even from my white brothers. The one farmer where I work, I mean, he was asking me, what is your desire? I said, I need a house. He said, man, I'm going to sponsor you with 100,000 rand.
Wow.
So I really believe that heaven will open when all of us are willing to be baptized. The haves to meet with the have-nots. But the thing is, our hands will not be right unless our hearts is right and unless our minds is right. There's a saying that says that our reality will only change if our mentality changes. So our mentality needs to change for our reality to change. And those are the basis of any change process. And then we need to really create that desire for the need to change, not just for us, but for our next generation.
That is true.
I wouldn't want my son and my daughter to experience the painful past that I grew up with. I want them to really experience what it means to be living in the Rainbow Nation, in this lovely country that and unfortunately, all of us, we need to do our part.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have got any question, you can raise it as we engage across the brain. For me, one of the questions I always ask myself is, as a classified colored person, I will ask you because I'm talking to you. Is there a situation like your son has been saying, am I Black or am I white or am I in between? And what does it do to a person who is in that state of asking those kind of questions? Because when you go to the white side, you will be welcomed. And then you go to the black side, okay, there will be a little bit of welcoming, because the black people usually have got issues with, no, they are wannabe white kind of a thing, you know? So how would you advise a person that is probably dealing with those kind of situation, or kids or children or young people that are growing now as we speak, and they are not necessarily, it's the surname that says they are colored, or their environment that says they are colored. Sometimes you find that their skin is actually as black as mine. Their hair is not as curly as yours, you know, and they can as well be classified as what, but because they were told that they belong within the colored community, then the confusion might be quite huge, because the rejection, I'm assuming, will be huge from the side of white and a bit bigger from the side of black, and even within the community of colors. Now you look more like a black person, you're not necessarily white. So how do a person deal, how do you deal with those, and what advice would you give? Maybe you can or park that. Let me take Shadrach is for the question so that you can.
Sure.
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Bruyn, for such a thought-provoking presentation on race. You see, when we, maybe it's more of a comment than a question, but when we attained our democracy in 1994, I was under no illusion that all of a sudden there will be racial harmony in our country. More so taking into account the situation in countries like USA, where you've got movements like Black Lives Matter, where they've attained their democracy over hundreds of years ago, and they are still suffering from this scourge of racism. If you look at the xenophobia in general, black peoples are against black people from other African countries, but not caring whether we've got Taiwanese in the country who might be here illegally, whether we've got Chinese. Our concern in the main is about the presence of other black nationals in our country. You look at instances like in our big retail shops, I wouldn't want to name them. You go and shop in Sandton, you will not be required to present the slip to the security officer. The very same retail shop, you go to Soshanguve when you buy. Now you are required to present your till slip to be checked against the items that you have purchased. And you start asking yourself, is this policy by the same company? And if yes, why then it applies differently to areas wherein a majority of black people are living? When police are looking for illegal immigrants, they will go to
We can't hear you anymore. I think he's struggling with network.
Sure.
But you got the gist of what he wanted to
yes. Thanks, Sarah. And I, I'm also part of a project, the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation, the IJR. That's work starts after 1994 process of the truth and reconciliation process. And one thing that we do and what we really believe is that all of us, especially as a Black nation, all of us, we need inner healing. And we need to heal ourselves because, you know, we always say is that there's so many people that is classified as foreign nationals. We will fight only against our white brothers, but you find somebody from Germany, somebody from China. To us, those people are not classified as foreign nationals. So I really believe that we are our own enemies, and most of us, we need to understand is that we live in a world that is very larger than the color of our skin. And I almost want to say that we have sold ourselves to this colonial history that we have lived under, and that we must never think take freedom. Hence, we do not really experience that freedom after 27 years of democracy. We still find people live in absolute poverty because we thought that because of an event, our freedom will come. Our freedom will come only if we decide to live in that freedom, not the freedom that was given to us, but the freedom that we took by ourselves. It is a decision, and then we must live based on that decision, not because of a white person that given us freedom or a political party gave us freedom. We need to create that space.
That is so true. That is really true. Last week we were discussing about who are we as South Africans, and I think some of the things that you are raising actually connect to that, to the fact that we, I think we never took time to do an introspection and to find a way in which we'll be able to accommodate all of us as a collective. The event that you are talking about, we thought is going to be like a fixer of everything. When people hear that it's a rainbow nation, then they will be so excited and become a rainbow nation indeed. I was watching TV the other day and they were questioning I don't know, there is the coach for cricket as to why did he appoint white only coaches, like a male for that matter. And he had reasons to give. And even went to an extent of saying, why are you questioning me appointing these people and not the time when I was appointed? So there was quite a debate. So I agree that we never got to a point where we really did an introspection and ask ourselves, okay, after getting this so-called democracy, what then? How do we deal with people having been had and having suffered, having grew up in very poor conditions while watching the white counterparts, you know, living life that is nice, working for them, getting positions like you've indicated, when they found people who are already having experience. Unfortunately, even as Black people, there are people who get appointed and found people who are having experience, and those who come because of their linkage with specific political parties or, you know, nepotism being at play, they get, you know, recognized. So one wonders, how then do we approach this transformation to make sure that government plays its role? I don't think the Truth and Reconciliation actually did what it was supposed to do. Maybe it should have been extended for a longer period, because if America, like Shadrach was saying, America is still experiencing those racial divide? What about us who's like sort of a young democracy now? Unfortunately, we've got all this. How do we treat each other? I think these are so many questions which, as us engaging here, will not be able to get answers. It's a continuous learning and unlearning and wanting to change. Shadrach, we cut you off at the time, or this, what do you call it? The system cut you off. Do you still have any additional things that you wanted to add?
What I wanted, yeah, I think this the network here is a bit of a problem. But what I wanted to say, it's you see the state of racism in our country. I remember one architect of apartheid. He is reported to have commented that you see, we have developed this system in a way that even if this country will experience democracy, it will take years after that to deal with this demon of democracy. And looking at what is happening currently in our country, I'm starting sadly to believe in that reality that we will deal with this demon for a very long time. And the reality of the situation is there is nothing as stupid as racism or sexism or anything, any prejudice on the basis of gender, race, creed of a particular person. So yeah, that is basically what I wanted to comment before I was cut off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think this is one of the systems that will take willingness not only from government, but also from us as citizens within the country to want to see the change that we always talk about, to want to transform. Yeah, I'm just thinking of a whole lot of situations where I come from originally. I'm Tsonga speaking, so where I come from, there's Venda speaking people, and there's also in some areas Sotho speaking people. They call them Balobedu. And the way we label each other based on the ethnic groups, it's really not nice, to a point of even fighting to say that I don't want to belong to that side where this group stay. I want to belong to my own side. It just shows that we still live in that rule and divide system, which I think is it will really take all of us to have willingness to change. Any closing remarks or anything that you would want to say as we draw to a close?
Yeah, tell me, maybe if I can really say that it's a long way. Like we say that we really have to continue this conversation at our homes, but there are greater things or greater challenges that we have than just our race and ethnicity. But you know, one of the things that I truly believe in that will bring change within our communities is something that almost we run away from. It is the fact that all of us, we need to take responsibility for our own destiny and for our own future. Tell people that, you know, it is not a matter of black and white, but we need to take responsibility. And responsibility for me, it means three things. Responsibility means that I don't blame, I don't complain, and I don't make excuses.
Please repeat it again. You don't blame.
I don't blame, I don't complain, and I don't make excuses.
Okay.
So we all need to take responsibility for our own destiny, as I repeat, and our own future. I don't blame the past. I don't blame white people for where I am. I don't blame my mother. I take responsibility. I don't complain where I am now. I take responsibility, because we can sit here and complain, but that is not going to bring us change. And I don't make excuses. We just have to take the opportunity to say that whatever I desire in life, I must create that space by taking responsibility. I don't blame, I don't complain, and I don't make excuses.
That is so profound. It's actually a good way of ending this session and a reminder to everybody, because now I think we blame government, we blame our parents, we blame our relatives, and not ourselves. So the fingers are always pointing at the next person and not necessarily ourselves. You are actually saying to us, we need to take that responsibility, and we need to be the ones that will make that change, which we always talk about. We need to transform ourselves before we even point at Douglas to say, yeah, they must change the way they treat us. How are you treating yourself? How are you treating them in return? Because it is also your role to make sure that we become that rainbow nation which we talk about. I think for me, in closing, building the Africa that we all want, not necessarily even South Africa, the Africa that we want, which will contribute towards making the world a better place, will require each and every individual to take responsibility and play the role. And like you said, not blame, no complain, no excuses, and take that responsibility of making sure that ethnic groups or ethnicity does not define us. Being white or black or whatever color you want to call it should not define us, because it's actually dividing us. But we should consider the fact that we all have red blood flowing in our veins. We all breathe the same oxygen. There's no white or black or colored oxygen. It's the same oxygen. No matter how white or black or brown your skin is, you're still a person created in the image of God. So if that is who we are, then why can't we relate and interact with each other equally and not compete? Hey, the competition part is one thing that actually kills us, makes us to look better than others, when actually we are the same, and we need to lend a hand, like you were saying. One of the people gave you or offered money for you to have a house. I think that's how we can build this community in South Africa and also in Africa, to be helping each other and also looking after each other. Now we build these high walls, protecting each other from the people on the other side of the wall. Why? Because of poverty. People don't have. We keep things to ourselves. We don't share. But we preach Ubuntu, which is not necessarily being practiced. I just cannot thank you enough for this thought-provoking. I'm definitely going to read more, research more, ask myself more questions. Like, I've already written quite a lot of things that I'm going to be considering in terms of writing my own reports, because I believe this is something that needs to be raised not only in platforms like this, but also in different platforms, which will allow us to be able to engage and also look at how we can change the situation, because it's really growing. It's growing and it's not funny. Yeah, it's growing, it's not funny. So thank you so very much. You can have your last word before we say our goodbyes. But thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Thembi, to be part of your journey, because all of us, we need to be transformed. And there's one principle that I live by. It's actually a coaching model that I really love. It's the GROW model. The GROW says that all of us, we need to have goals. Irrespective of our realities, the R, we all need to not be defined by our realities. Why? Because there's a O. All of us, we have options and we have opportunities. And the W stands for the will and the work that we need to put into action. So yes, we all are part of this Rainbow Nations, but there's a will that we all need. That's why they say in the old, where there's a will, there will be a way.
A way.
Each one of us.
Wow. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that you would love to watch this video over and over again and again. Thank you so much, Douglas the Brain, and thank you to your family for allowing us to have you on a Saturday. We really appreciate this time. I am Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and I really appreciate that you'll be watching this video and learning from it. Hopefully, as a country and also as Africa, as a continent, we will look at each other as brothers and sisters, irrespective of ethnic groups or racial divide, and help each other where we can. Look out for each other because we are one human race. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.